Travis, there is so much to talk about. You and I could talk right here for the rest of our lives because there is so much to talk about.
Especially the way Biden just destroyed Trump in that debate. Did you see Trump just get crushed last Thursday in that debate? Biden, he was on top of it, man.
He was on top of his game, wasn't he? Yeah.
Wow. I mean, he just did it. He just snappy. Boom, but boom, but boom, just riddling facts. And I think his strategy was that he spoke incoherently so that we wouldn't be able to critique him. I think it was win-win. He went unanswered. I mean, did you see how Trump says, I didn't even understand what you said? See how he fooled Trump? See how you just did the old snickeroo around him? Amazing, man.
We're gonna underestimate him and let down our guard, and he's gonna come right in at the end and just whoop on him. Yeah.
Pouncy.
That's right.
I don't believe he'll be the nominee until he walks up to the microphone and says, I accept your nomination at the DNC. Until that happens, and then up until the moment it actually happens, I don't believe he's going to be the nominee.
Well, I read something about the rules of how that works, and Joe Biden himself, the nominee himself, is the only one who can say, I'm out. The convention and the members of the convention cannot do it. He has to himself say, I'm out, I'm endorsing somebody else, and I'm transferring my funds to their campaign.
I believe he's going to walk on stage and say, talk about his love for the country for about 5 minutes and how he's going to step down, and then he's going to introduce who he thinks should be the next president, and that person will walk off stage and they'll do an immediate vote. I believe that person will be Michelle Obama.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I think, I'm in California, so my fear that keeps me up at night is that it would be Gavin Newsom, but
I think he might be the running mate.
Yeah, he really could.
They'll have to bribe Kamala with a carrot or a yellow school bus or something. They're going to have to get her off the stage, but they're going to announce. It'll be a surprise. It'll be just a big, and then they'll hope to use the leverage gained from just the shock and awe of it to carry them into November.
In your estimation, if you had to put a probability on Biden not being the nominee, would you think it's more likely than 50% or less likely than 50%?
Oh, I'm in the 90s on that.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been wrong before, and the day I'll be proven wrong. And when's the DNC? I think it's August 25th or something.
I don't know.
The day that he receives the nomination is the day I'm proven wrong, and I will get on this platform and say, "Oops, I was wrong, Ross." And I promise you can ask my wife. She knows, she keeps track of all my mistakes. I made quite a bit. So I know
a full-time job there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a full-time job. I can be wrong. There's no doubt about it. And I might be wrong here, but my feeling of certitude, which is not the same thing as certainty, my feeling of certitude is that in the 90 percentile, 98 percentile, 99 percentile, that Biden will not be the nominee. And I don't care if we're looking at the day before. I'm still going to maintain that until at the DNC, he, says, thank you. I want to be your president. I accept your nomination.
Well, neither one of us are fans of his.
No.
And I hope you're right, but I think you're wrong. I think he's got so much support from his family that he can't see the truth of it. And so if you can think of a wager, can you think of a wager off the top of your head between the two of us? I think he's going to be the nominee.
Assuming all things go according to plan, I'll be at the SCS National Apologetics Conference. So I guess I can buy you dinner.
Okay.
If you go, that's October 10th, 11th, 12th.
Good. Dinner in South Carolina. That's a bet. Shake here. Shake.
You've seen it here, folks. So
all right. We'll see. I hope you're right. I think you're wrong. We're talking Travis. Well, first of all, this is Travis and Ross, and this is Notes On, and we try to do Christ on Purpose, and we're still talking about near-death experiences. Last time we got deep in the weeds on some philosophical stuff. We were talking about hylomorphism, and if it's okay with you, I'd like to get to this list that I have, and we can pick it apart, and then maybe go back into that, because I think I read a lot of that paper you sent me, and I'm trying to get tuned up on hylomorphism. But
may your tribe increase.
What's that?
May your tribe increase.
Yes, thank you. So the last couple of weeks, we've talked about how some near-death experiences are verifiable. People leave their body and see things in the operating room, on the roof of the hospital, in the room next door, that actually happened. And what that does is it verifies that these are not dreams, these are not hallucinations, these are real experiences of the real world. And Travis, these near-death experiences are one piece, right? They're not episodic like we have dreams where we wake up and we remember a snippet here and a snippet there. And so, in my mind, the fact that at least part of the near-death experience is verifiable, which makes it a real experience of the real world again. And they have this continuous experience where they then go, what they say, into a tunnel or into heaven, or they have these other experiences which are not verifiable. But because they are one piece, they're one experience, in my mind, the verifiable parts lend credence to the idea that these are also real experiences.
Right.
The other thing that lends credence to that, in my mind, are these 10 or 12 things on this list that are commonalities of near-death experiences. Not all people who have NDEs have all of these, but many of them do, and these are repeated time after time. Scores and hundreds and thousands of people have these common experiences. So let's get into this list, because it's really intriguing. If you and I had we were in a room with 100 people, and we said, share the last dreams that you had, and we all talked about them, I think there would be very, very few things that would be in common. There'd be very few things that we could say. I could say, oh, Travis, I had a dream about the same thing in the same kind of style or manner that you did.
Sure.
They're just random and all over the place. But with NDEs, there's a structure to them usually. So that's what I wanted to talk about. So can you bring that slide up?
Sure. Let's see.
So the first one is what we just talked about, that many of them have verifiable observations. I think we've beat that one up pretty good. The next one is that often as they are traveling, they say that they are going through a tunnel or a passageway. Clearly they're traveling from somewhere to somewhere else, but it's not a garden path or a automobile or a blast through interstellar space. It seems to be the tunnel and passageway via way, passage, I don't know what to call it, seems to be a common theme. Again, if these were just dreams or hallucinations, it's not likely that we'd keep seeing these same things over and over again. And the third one, this is not a typo. It's light that is love. Many times there's a light at the end of that tunnel. Sometimes it's bright and close. Sometimes it's way far away. They're traveling towards it. But several people have described it as that is the source of love. That is the source of the amazing, good, peaceful feeling that they feel when they're in these NDEs. And that's pretty remarkable that you would know that. And they're very eager to get there. And they see it as God. But it appears as a spot of light.
Right.
Now, the fourth one is one that, as I started to look into this one actually kind of convicted me. Many people have what they call a life review. And sometimes they're on the operating table for, 5 minutes. The actual, span of the time that they were having their NDE was 5 minutes or 10 minutes. In the case of Pam Reynolds, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, her NDE lasted an hour. But the people who are having the NDEs don't perceive time in the same way. Many people say that everything they ever said and did was presented before them in stark detail and clarity. And one woman said something that really touched me. She said, every interaction I ever had with another person was on display, and how I did with that. And the reason that this has been convicting to me is that I thought, I want to take that seriously. The idea that we're going to be judged for what we do is certainly a biblical idea. And here it is. Here it is. People come back from these NDEs and they say, yep, that's a real thing. A lot of people are changed by it. They realize that the way they treat other people, especially, is a permanent record in the universe. It's not just something that blows by. Mm-hmm. And I've just tried really hard I just want to be kind and nice and attentive, to everybody. The checker at Home Depot, and the guy that flips me off in the car next to me, and the waitress, and all the.
They do that in LA? Do they flip you off in traffic?
No, not here. I had that happen to me once in Atlanta, but it never happens here. Yeah.
In LA, so they're very kind drivers.
Absolutely, yeah, they're really wonderful people out here. I just, hypothetically, of course.
Yes, again.
But I just wanted to take that seriously, and it's made a difference, and I even pray for it. It's like, Lord, help me to just not be a flaming jerk today. That's one of my prayers. And anyway, what do you think of that?
Well, Christ warns us of this. He says, on the day of our judgment, every thought and action will be weighed.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the things about these NDEs that really struck me, Travis, was we read this stuff in the Bible and we believe it. But then you come up on an entirely different source for many of the same things. And it's like, it's confirmed in a way that was surprising to me. Like, wow, we really do get judged. People come back, Christian, non-Christian, they come back and they say, yep, your life flashes before your eyes. You're judged. Everything's on display. Nothing's hidden. You can't hide it. You can't sweep it under the rug. You can't talk your way out of it. It's right there.
Right.
So I just want to take that seriously. A lot of people say that they have a heightened awareness during the NDE, that many people say that the NDE is more real than what we have here. Like, as if that's where they're supposed to be and they know it. Like, this is the dream. That's the reality. That's that's pretty cool if that's the case. And again, that sounds biblical, doesn't it? Like, that world is our home. This one isn't. Many people have a really profound sense of peace. They get there and they realize this is what forever is going to feel like. And many of them do not want to come back. They just realize this is how it should be. They realize right away that they're dead. Usually, if they see themselves on the operating table,
Sure.
they realize, fairly quickly that that's me, and they know, they like we talked about, they still have their cognitive abilities, and they know where they are. This next one has a lot of I think a lot of implications. Many times they say that deceased relatives are there waiting for them. Now, here's an implication that I see in this, Travis. If I was a critic, I would say, well, even if I grant you all of this, maybe this is just a temporary thing. Maybe there is life after death, but it only lasts half an hour or an hour, or, what's your evidence that this is permanent? Well, if you're seeing deceased relatives who passed away 30 or 40 years ago and they're there waiting for you, then, well, they've been there for 30 or 40 years. So that lends a lot of plausibility to the idea that this is a permanent thing.
Sure.
And one of the really cool things, Travis, that there's been many NDEs where people have seen someone, a deceased relative, that they didn't know was dead, and they come back. They come back and they recount it to the doctor, and then of course they find out that person passed away like 3 days ago or last week, and they didn't even know they were dead.
In some occasions, the person died at the same time that the person who had the NDE died.
Right.
And so they came back. But the point being, there was no way for anyone that had the NDE, for the person who had the NDE, to know at the time they went under or the time they passed out or whatever, that there was no way for them to know that person had died.
That's exactly right. So here's more evidence that these are real experiences. We talked about how you can visualize the world that you're in, but if you want to communicate with somebody, it's usually some kind of telepathic communication. Of course, there's no air there, so there's no sound waves. Apparently, you can just think a thought and the person knows it. We have no idea how that works, of course. You can direct it towards someone and they receive it. You're not deluged with 9 billion pieces of communication that are floating all over the place. Somehow you're able to aim it at a person.
Right.
Oftentimes people see a border or a boundary, and they're told that they can't go past that point. They're told that if they go past that point, then they can't return. Right. And that's really interesting. I don't know what that's about, but it's a common thread in a lot of NDEs. And then this last one is pretty interesting. Oftentimes they are told, they say that they want to stay, and they're told that they want to that they have to return. And once in a while, Travis, they're actually given the choice: do you want to stay or do you want to return? And most of the time, people, obviously the ones that come back, wanted to return, usually because they had kids or family, or they felt was unfinished business. They know that they're in some kind of heavenly realm. They know they're not on earth. It's so different than what's here. The heightened awareness, the extra colors that you see, the telepathic communication, the light that is love, the tunnel, all of that stuff. It's very clear that this is a different place. And then the last one, and we can get into what we were talking about before we went on the air. Boy, excuse me, is encountering God or Jesus. And one of the things, Travis, that makes this really supportive of not just the afterlife, not just theism, but supportive of Christianity, is that people encounter Jesus. They encounter a God who is more defined by Christianity than any other religion. They don't see Buddha. They don't see Muhammad. They see Jesus. Even people who are Buddhists and Muslims and atheists. So that's my list. What are your thoughts there?
The fact that these are extremely common experiences that cross multiple worldviews is in itself strong evidence that this stuff is veridical and true.
Yes.
And in our last 10 minutes, maybe we can just talk about the whole issue of what this implies in terms of what is the true religion. I think that, I mean, if I had nothing else to say, I would at least say that this fits best in the broad context of theism. It certainly doesn't really fit well. NDEs are not the furniture for an atheistic worldview. That's pretty obvious. I think I've already mentioned that A.J. Ayer, logical positivist, early 60s, he had an NDE and he said, well, I didn't see God in the afterlife, so I still don't believe. And that is an indication that there's some people for whom no amount of evidence will convince them. I think most people, given an NDE, they're going to rethink some things. But Ayer just shrugged his shoulders. He shrugged it off and said, well, I didn't see God in the afterlife, so whatever. But that, how does that comport with materialism? It seems to me that minimally the atheist is going to have to, I was reading this somewhere, maybe Sean McDowell. No. There's another podcast I was listening to, and he was talking about UFOs. And some of these atheists who are encountering these UFOs have come to agree with Hugh Ross that this is something. It was a Harvard paper that explores this, and this individual said, we need to swell our ontology. That's a really great sentence.
Wow.
You need to broaden your view of reality so as to allow for these spirits to exist. Well, the same kind of thing is going on here. You need to swell your ontology to at least allow for immaterial things to exist. And I just have a really hard time how an atheist is just going to remain an atheist if they allow for this sort of thing to obtain. But one of the issues that Sean McDowell has just tackled on his podcast, for those that are interested in our presentation over this in the past couple of weeks, they may be interested to go over in 7 minutes after we're finished with ours to go over to Sean McDowell's YouTube channel. He interviews Steve Miller, and Miller has done some research on this. He's written several volumes on NDEs, and Miller has explored the apologetical issue of universalism. That is to say, what do you do with the skeptic who says, well, look, if you're born in America, you're probably a Christian, you're going to see Jesus. You're born in Saudi Arabia, you're Muslim, and you're going to see Muhammad. And this is wholly worldview determined as to which religious figure you see. And Miller has pointed out, and I don't have the stats on top of my head, but he gives very significant statistics that the case studies are not bearing that out. Now, he's a very careful researcher, so he's not doing like a Google search and getting some person. He's going to the peer-reviewed journals that are keeping up with this, and they're trying to be as strict as they possible as to what they admit in as a veridical NDE. And when you look at those case studies, it's an extremely small percentage, almost to be negligible, to the effect that, say, someone sees Muhammad or Vishnu, right, or Krishna or Buddha or something. The other thing that you need to take into account is, you and I would both agree that there are many fake NDEs in the sense that a person has an experience when they're about to die, but it's not the actual deportation of their soul into another realm. I believe that sort of thing happens too.
Sure.
It's not like every single stated case. And so we're talking about such a small percentage. I can't know if the NDE that the person had where they saw Muhammad, for example, whether that NDE was veridical or just perceived. I'm
Right.
not saying the person's insincere. I'm just saying that, just because you during a surgery have this kind of experience doesn't mean that you actually really had this kind of experience. Maybe you perceived it to be so. Now, some people say, well, how do you verify then? Well, you do it in the ways that you've been talking about over the past couple of weeks, like the woman that floated above a building and saw a red shoe, and that was verified, or someone who said, well, so-and-so has died and nobody in the family knew, and they turned out that they died the very hour that the person was having their near-death experience.
Right.
Those kinds of things verify the truthfulness and the objectivity of the experience. And so since you have such a small percentage, I don't think that would overturn in any way, shape, or form our conviction that there's one true religion. And the second thing I always say is, it's funny how people just in a knee-jerk reaction will say, oh, well, if you're born in India, you're going to see Buddha. Well, I mean, are you a Buddhist? I mean,
Right.
most Americans don't understand what Buddhism teaches. Buddhism teaches that there is no such thing as the soul. That's why they call it the no soul doctrine. Okay. And what they mean by that is that there is no enduring self that endures even this moment, let alone the death of the body.
So what you're saying,
The only thing that survives is the aggregate that kind of spills into another form, and that is what's reincarnated. And so it's not really so much me that experiences bad karma, but my descendant self. Some guy in the future is going to receive the bad karma, but it's not going to be me because I don't survive even the moment. And so if you have a near-death experience that's veridical and you see Buddha, you might want to have a talk with Buddha in the afterlife because you just disproved his whole philosophy.
That's right.
Buddha, you've been around for this long because you taught that, every moment you perish. And so, near-death experiences do not fit, not just in atheism, but they don't fit. That's not a good piece of furniture to put into the Buddhist worldview either. So only a broadly Abrahamic theistic worldview, I think, can best accommodate these things. And the very fact that we have a solid, I can't remember what the statistic Miller gave was, but it was pretty significant. It was 20 to 30% of these confirmed cases. They experience it in a Christian way, and many of those experience Jesus. They see Jesus in the afterlife.
Yeah. So a Buddhist can't have a near-death experience that supports Buddhism.
That's right.
If a Buddhist has a near-death experience, he needs to give up Buddhism because it was disconfirmed.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's absolutely right. And another thing to point out in this, a lot of people try to make comparisons between Jesus and Buddha by saying, well, Buddha performed miracles too. Well, I mean, is that possible? Maybe, but the reports about Jesus and his miracles come about no more than 40 years after his death. And a lot of people are like, whoa, that's a long time. It's not that long. I can remember what was going on in the 70s, and the 80s.
Yeah.
40 years ago. I mean, so that's not like so gargantuanly wrong that people can't remember what happened. But the other thing to point out is that the stories of the first biography of Buddha was written in the year AD 100, the year 100. Buddha died in 480 BC. So you have a 500, 600-year gap between Buddha's death and the first biographies of Buddha. Now, 40, I went to private school, but apparently even in public school, they teach you that 40 years is a shorter amount of time than 500. And if you think that we can't trust the miracle stories of Jesus, then why would you even think that you can trust the miracle stories of Buddha? And does it make sense to think that Buddha, given his view that there is no God, would perform miracles, which by definition are an act of God? I just don't understand why anybody would think that this line of reasoning to draw a parity between these two figures. Buddha himself would eschew miracle stories. He would say that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So these and other reasons lead me to think that you can't use NDEs in particular to reconcile the religions. That's just not going to wash, given what you've said and what Steve Miller is saying over at Sean McDowell's channel, as well as just the fact that, as a broader point, these religions are so logically contradictory that they're either all false or only one of them is true.
That makes sense. Travis, we didn't finish. Imagine that.
We never do.
We're never going to finish. Are we in an NDE here and we're just like destined to talk to each other for the rest of our lives?
Dying to death with 1,000 qualifications.
All right, brother.
Well, man, you have a happy 4th.
Yeah, you too. And read all those Supreme Court decisions. It came out with a bunch of stuff today. I got to check it all out. So
yeah, good day for the Republicans.
Yep. All right, brother.
Take care.
Always good. See you later. Bye.